Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
This is John Schultz. I'm Windish.
Charlie from Crescent Ballroom.
Craig Newman.
Dave Brooks.
Dave Ratner.
John Holiday.
Doug Bicknell.
LX.
Imong Shah. Elliot Lefkoe.
Gerald B. Henley.
Harlan Fry here.
Jack Ross.
Jason Miller.
Jeffrey Fox. Joe Escalante.
Blair LeBlanc. Martin Atkins.
Neil Dixon.
Nick Farkas.
Paula Palazzo.
And I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101!
Welcome to Promoter 101, the most badcast pod-ass of all time. To begin the game, press start.
Oh, dang it, Jimbo. The game froze up again. Blow out the cartridge. I don't want to blow out the cartridge. You blow out the cartridge. I'll blow the cartridge out. All right. Here we go.
Player 1, select character. You've selected Dan Steinberg, aka the Jew. Player 2, select character. You've selected W. Luke Pierce, aka W. Luke Pierce. Level 1. Begin.
Welcome, friends, as we are inching our way towards episode 100. This, for now, is episode 96 of the Promoter 101 podcast on the Promoter 101 radio network.
Yeah, we're a fucking network. This week on Promoter 101, we've got the guys from Milwaukee Summerfest. Vic, Bob, and Scott are all here talking to us.
Plus, we've got Primary Talent's Martin Hopewell sharing the history of the International Live Music Conference.
Plus a war story from CAA's Brian Hill.
And news of the week.
This is John Giddings, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Luke, did you know that you can listen to the Promoter 101 podcast pretty much anywhere?
Really, anywhere?
Yeah, it's like on Spotify now, iHeart, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Music, like pretty much anywhere.
Order off of any menu, you'll find Promoter 101. We want to hear from you and want to know where you're listening to, so tell us, shoot us an email at steiny@promoter101.net.
And if you got the hookups to get us on YouPorn, let us know, because that's the one place we're not on yet.
Call Wheeler Walker Jr., he'll figure out a way to get you on there.
Hey, you can follow us on Twitter. Luke is W. Luke Pierce. I'm the Jew, and the show is Promoters 101.
John Holiday, Promoter 101.
If you've missed any of our past podcasts, well, now's your chance to catch up. Episode 53 is this week's classic reissue of the week.
Episode 53 was a great episode. We had Voice Media Group's CEO, Scott Tobias, in talking about the shrinking print market and how his company was able to pivot to a bigger digital footprint.
Also, APA's Bruce Solar talks to us about the history of the business and what it takes to break and discover new talent. Something Luke Pierce knows something about.
Plus, we had tour bus driver to the stars, Les Ingram, in giving us a bird's eye view and some stories from the road. And Cheryl Bunce played 3 questions.
Don't forget to drop us a review or subscribe to the Promoter 101 podcast. It's free, and we badly, badly, badly need your approval. So, sign up and give us a review and tell us you like us. Even if you have to lie to us, it's okay.
We need that so badly.
Please like us. Please.
Hey, this is Mike McGinley,
Mitch Rose,
Peter Katzis, Mike Hayes,
Tony from APA, Vince Bannon,
Deshaun Healy,
Steve Rennian,
Rick Canny,
Sam Kinkin,
Rob McDermott. Happy to be here on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
News of the week.
It's time for the news of the week.
As everybody knows, just this morning, we lost the Queen of Soul. She was a legend, and it was an honor to work with her. Joining us now on the podcast is ICM Partners Scott Pang with a remembrance of his client that we lost this week, the Queen, Aretha Franklin.
Well, I've had the honor and the privilege
to work with Aretha Franklin over the years. She was a most incredible talent. And she represented something more than just music. She represented a generation. She represented an era. And she represented what's right about the world in terms of social justice and causes and things that she supported. That was always the good things about her, is that she really knew what was going on in the world. She was not living in a enclosed little capsule like many musicians and artists do. She was very well versed in the news, what was going on in today's world. She and I used to talk about it all the time. And at times we would have just great laughs about the injustices of the world, the funny things that people do to each other. And we would just sit back and sometimes just start laughing until you couldn't stop crying. I mean, it was absolutely fun to do that with a client, to really see the human side of somebody. So I'm going to really miss her. I think the world will really miss her. There's nobody else out there that has come close to what she's done. And, I think it's a sad day for all of us. So long live the Queen.
Scott Peng with ICM Partners. Thank you for joining us. In some later news, Luke, what's on topic for you today?
Dan, I wanted to just talk about an interesting piece. It was not a crazy news week for the stuff that we would typically be talking about here, but one piece caught my attention because every time something like this happens, it kind of really cements a shift in people's thinking. And then this was a piece out of Variety, came out of TBS. It's the television network, saying that Conan O'Brien's show Conan is going to move to a 30-minute format starting in January 2019, which means they're going to be cutting regular music performances from its programming. And the show's music booker, Roy Hershkovitz, is going to leave the show, although he may stick around on future specials and continue to work on the TeamCoco.com digital platform. Dan, you've had a lot of experience seeing us move to a digital, multi-screen, multi-channel way of consuming music. And these late night shows, the Lettermans, the Lenos, for these things that dominated the 90s and early 2000s, we're now seeing a shift away from music being broken on these television formats. Another dagger gets thrown in the line of thinking here with Conan making that cut right now too. What do you think about this?
Well, here's the thing. When Conan was on network, it was huge. Whether he was in the late night platform or he was just in the late show. Either way, it was a huge, huge platform. But being on cable, much attention as that had when he made the shift, it's not working for him the same like Sirius Radio is working for Stern. People are staying with the younger guys that are on the network shows. And he's just not beating out Jimmy and Colbert and Fallon. It just isn't happening. So they got to shift it up and try something new. If that means getting away from the musical acts or doing something shorter, either way, they're just not winning in the competition right now. Conan isn't nearly as pliable as he's been in past years. It just isn't working out. So they're just putting the ball in the air now and trying to save it.
He's had a lot of success with the TeamCoco.com stuff. And I think, obviously more eyeballs have been translated into the after airing hours of these late night shows, whether it being on Fallon's YouTube channel or TeamCoco.com or something like that. For me, I see these things and I think, wow, SNL was the pinnacle of late night television and music performances. And it's where you had your breakout moments on TV. And now with less of those things being in focus and this obviously being a network play versus cable, yeah, of course, there was always that discounting factor. But the fact that they're doing away with the format at all, removing that programming to me just, signifies a shift in kind of the official demarcation and end of an era, so to speak.
Look, I'm a huge fan of Conan's and always have been. I think we're just seeing a shift. First of all, if you go back a couple steps and you look at the Carson show, nothing could compete with it. Arsenio, Dennis Miller, Joan Rivers, Pat Sajak. Over the years, lots of people tried to compete with that show. And it really was the only game in town. And going back even earlier, that show itself was the brand on NBC and nothing could compete with it. Now, every network has a show. And Leno and Letterman definitely broke that audience in half when they went head to head. And that changed the game a little bit. And the late night wars have begun and it's just not changing. And now it's a 3-dog race with all three guys. And even the late night shows guys are still doing a great job of fighting it out for that time. But it's a network game for the most part. But yeah, you're definitely seeing the 2-screen thing be huge and the digital platform. You listen to Bill Maher on HBO. After the show, the panel goes live and you can interact with them with questions and and they still stay on the secondary digital platform after the live show's off HBO. So people want more content and they're loving the things, but there's so much more out there. There's YouTube and there's Netflix and there's every website in the world. And it's just so much in the space right now. There's a lot of white noise. It's not the same way as it was with Carson.
That's true. Remember when there was like a network share meant something like 70% of households were tuning in? I mean, this is what we talk about in the movie network itself. Today, fragmentation is the name of the game. A million options for entertainment out there, a million different formats, screens to be watching it on. So the game, of course, is changing here, and this being kind of the beginning of the end for some of this programming, I think.
Well, and you also got to think, how many of those people are losing out to the Promoter 101 podcast that would have been tuning into Late Night and Conan, and instead are just listening to us? I mean, it's got to be literally ones and twos of people.
I'm surprised that Dave Brooks didn't run our piece when we said that we're going to be adding a music component to the Promoter 101 podcast. I didn't see any mention of that in Variety or Billboard this week.
That's because we never made that announcement, Luke.
Oh, we didn't? Oh, fuck.
Well, I guess we forgot to do that.
Guess what? We forgot to do that.
If we put music on our podcast, we have to pay for the rights to broadcast that over the internet, and that gets really expensive, and that's just past our allowance budget for the podcast, Luke.
My mom docked mine, Dan, so we're in serious trouble there.
So no music edition, and that's where that announcement went. Could you talk to your mom about getting the allowance kicked up, and maybe we could pick up that musical component and get Ronnie Hershevik from the Conan Show a new job over here at Promoter 101?
I'll try
Full
very much.
Full circle, baby! Full circle!
Look at that. Bringing it back together.
Hey, let's get back on topic. What else is out there?
One final piece of news, Dan, got to talk about. It's a really cool thing that happened this week here in Nashville on Tuesday night. Dan and Shay, the Warner Music Group duo here, celebrated the continued success of their smash single Tequila by performing a free show that they had announced a few days prior on social media. About 10,000 people turned out between the two buildings of BMI and Warner's here on Music Row in Nashville. It was a crazy success, something nuts to witness, and just want to throw a huge congratulations out to Dan and Shay and their team at Warner's and Sandbox for an amazing year that continues with moments like that.
Just to be clear, I am not the Dan from Dan and Shay.
I think Shay Mooney will attest to that.
This is Eddie Clemens from United Talent Agency. I'm here on Promoter 101.
Everyone's favorite time, the announcement of the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
We are so excited this week to announce that the Badass of the Week goes to a legend, CAA Nashville's Rod Essick, because he's one of the biggest agents in the game. Everyone loves him. He has an amazing roster, and he's just a mensch of a guy. This week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week, Mr. Rod Essick.
Congrats goes out to Rod. It's like seeing Santa Claus every time you run into that guy. He's always so happy and jovial and bringing you offers. Congrats to Rod.
Mike Luba, Madison S. Presents, Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we're joined with Milwaukee's Summerfest's Vic Thomas, Bob Babisch, and Scott Ziel.
Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hi. Great to be here. It's going to be some fun.
Hey.
There's really nothing like what you guys do. You have not only a music-centered event, it runs pretty much the bulk of the summer. And there's free, there's paid, there's different sizes. But you guys have built such an enormous event that you really can't compete in the summer. Like, you kind of almost have to avoid the market if you're not part of Summerfest.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time period. It's 51 years old, and it started years and years ago when the mayor of Milwaukee, at that time, Henry Meyer, there were some racial issues going on in town, and he had gone to Germany, and he was there for Oktoberfest, and he thought, why can't we do this in Milwaukee? Why can't we do something inexpensive for all the people in the community so they can all get together for a couple of weeks in the summer and have a good time? So that was the genesis of it, if you will. And it started in parks all around the city. And it was mostly ethnic dance groups and things of that style. And it changed gradually over into rock, and it had some rock and pop, and it had some issues in the middle of a run with some situations with little mini riots on the grounds. And once we got through with that, it started to take off as a mixed genre event with all different styles of music going all the time. The theory has always been, and the charge for all of us has always been, to keep it as inexpensive as possible for the people of Milwaukee. So we try to hit as many genres as we can every day on the non-amphitheater stages. And you can always get into those stages free every day. There's always a discount or a way to get in free to the Summerfest grounds every day. Then the amphitheater is a separate animal entirely. That's where you see the Rolling Stones, or you see McCartney, or you see major acts acts out there, and then those ticket prices are whatever the market will bear at that time, and then that includes also a ticket to the rest of the festival.
Most festivals or fairs run a week, sometimes 2, but you guys go way longer than that.
Yeah, we run 11 days.
We have the 11 days of Summerfest, but the festival, Henry Meyer Park, is being used basically for 4 months out of the year for all sorts of other ethnic festivals and other community-based events. So it's a season. I know Vic is very heavily involved. Your first event kicks off this weekend?
Yeah, well, the first one is the UPath Ride for the Arts, but that's what we call a single-day event. But we also have
UPath?
UPath, United Performing Arts Fund.
You say that like everybody knows what that means.
Well, and everybody
I'm looking at you like that's a whole nother language.
Okay, so UPath, but then after that we have the Pride Festival, the Gay, Lesbian, Transgendered Festival. After that we have Polish Fest, then there's Summerfest, and then we go on Festa Italiana, German Fest, new one, Black Arts Festival,
Mexican Fiesta,
and Indian Summer.
So we try to, and then the theaters, 2 theaters down there that we spoke of earlier, the American Family Insurance Amphitheater and the BMO Harris Pavilion, 2 with undercover seating, those run all summer long. If we can get shows in there, we try to run that. You know, you have a small window of opportunity in Wisconsin to go outside, right? I mean, you're talking second week of May to maybe the last week of September. So you got to pack a lot of living into your spots. So
love how you nailed that Wisconsin.
I've always thought that the success of Summerfest, the main 11 days, our biggest event that draws 850 to 900,000 people over that time period, is the fact that literally, if you would have been out here 5 or 6 weeks ago, I still had my snowblower in my garage and just finally changed it out because we got a late season. Yeah, right. We had the late season snowstorm, I think, at the middle of April?
23 inches of snow in Green Bay, and 3 weeks later, it was 94 degrees.
But that's nothing. Tomorrow it's going to be 50 degrees.
Yeah, today it's 90, tomorrow it's 50. It's what
so
it is.
People just have this pent-up energy they know that when Memorial Day hits, that they're in the home stretch, Summerfest is coming up at the end of June, they're ready to go. They're looking forward to, whether it's looking for specific bands that we booked on the ground, certain amphitheater shows that they might buy tickets to, or just going to the festival on a Friday night because all their friends are there, see all walks of life. You know, it's just like, it's a really cool experience to see like everybody out.
And that goes back to the original idea where there's something there for everybody. A lot of the festivals that you see out there are kind of one genre or maybe 2 genres of music. Here you can see everything. So you can go out on any given night. You can see a hip hop act on one stage, a country act on another stage, a classic rock on another stage, a metal act on another stage. And it's all laid out and designed so the sound doesn't bother. One stage doesn't bother another stage. And you can put 100,000 people on the grounds at the same time and you can still be successful with as far as the noise goes. But it goes back to that we talked about earlier about people from Milwaukee, everybody coming down together and having a good time, all walks of life.
And is everybody getting along when you're putting a country and an urban show on simultaneously?
They walk around and they go and see everything, you know? So you can have a hip hop crowd walking by a country stage and stop for a second, or vice versa. You can have a classic rock act walking by and seeing a hip hop artist. And every night on all those stages, they're all national acts. So it's not like a local band playing there. They're all, national names. I think you've probably seen our brochures. I don't know if you have, but let's talk about, opening night, you've got Imagine Dragons on one stage, Lil Uzi Vert on another stage, Kane Brown on another stage, Jethro Tull on another stage.
EDM artist Alesso.
Alesso on another stage, yes.
We just filled in with All American Rejects, so kind of pop alternative show.
The 90s need love too, sure.
Of course they do. That's right. But it's all going on at the same time. The headliners are all going on between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and then the amphitheater starts at its usual 7:30.
So it's like Warped Tour meets like the George Strait Tour, and they like collided somehow
exactly
with a little taste of Bumbershoot at the same time.
That's exactly what it is.
I think the other thing is too, obviously 50 years, we basically are on our third generation. When you start to look at it as far as people that have been coming, their parents came, now they're having their children come. So within this area, we have our own, obviously, mystique because we've been here. We're right on the lakefront. There's a lot of things that actually work out really well for us.
You know, it's interesting. Vic's been there as long as I have, so we've been there 41 years.
Well, there's some fucking job security for you.
Scott, you've been there, what, 25?
Fucking newbie.
26 right here. Yeah, I know. They talk about bands. I'm like, who? What? What, Mott the Hoople? What the hell are you
Mott the
talking?
Hoople, there you go.
Yeah, so competing with you guys in the market's got to be something really tricky. I mean, Leslie West is here, and she's got the Rave and her venues there. Gary and Matt and Mark doing amazing things with the Riverside and Paps and Turner, and those guys keep those things programmed. But it's got to be a really hard thing to compete with that monster event that you guys have going. How long does Summerfest itself go?
Summerfest itself runs for 11 days.
Okay, so
right?
it really is compact, but it's a lot of talent really quick.
And we all play nice together. I mean, they know that we need acts at a certain time of the year, and they try to stay away from putting shows in during that time. They try to help us all the time. I mean, Gary and those guys are great. They send out stuff on their social for us. The guys at Leslie at the Eagles Club, they send out stuff for us. We send their stuff out. We all kind of work together and play together.
Wow, a friendly market.
What the hell is that all about? In this business?
I'm going to Denver tomorrow. It's not exactly the same thing.
Well, I kind of think that they kind of look at Summerfest as being the 2 or 3 weeks that they go on vacation, or that
they come down and see shows.
And they come and hang out with us, and it's very impressive. I come from a background of, I used to book clubs, manage bands. I had a record label. So
Anybody notable?
The bands that I worked with, probably the biggest one was a band that got signed to Warner Brothers called Citizen King that had a couple of songs.
Yeah.
And then kind of around that time when, like, you know, Sugar Ray and all that and Beck was really starting to happen. So this guy, Jeff Castle, as you might know, Jeff, he was, he's back to managing bands, but I had a little indie label and Jeff was managing bands, and we just started putting music out into the world. I did a deal with this guy, Willie Porter, who's a singer-songwriter.
Right.
You know Willie, and got him on AAA stations all around the country. Did the same for Paul Seabar. Helped.
So you know good music, but you pick bands that can't sell commercially because they're too good.
Well, there you go, and that's why I got out of that and came.
You know, it's an interesting.
Well, no, I mean amazing players though.
Right,
like you just named some guys that fucking shred.
Well,
but isn't that the business though? I mean, there's only going to be that creme de la creme.
It's interesting in Milwaukee, though, when you mentioned you got Castellez came out of Milwaukee. You got Randy McIlrath and his son Ryan McIlrath. Bob Rue came out of here. Dan Brown came out of here. Allison Larkin came out of here. A lot of people that are in the business came out of Milwaukee, got their start here.
And the point I was just trying to make was that since I moved to Milwaukee after college, been pushing and fostering the music scene locally and nationally, it's like everybody still references Milwaukee as being a very healthy place to be a musician, to be a music consumer, because we get along and we appreciate music, we foster it. A lot of the bands that I was working with in the Milwaukee scene would always talk about how competitive and cutthroat Chicago is. Like, okay, if you're going to go and play a gig for Joe Shanahan at the Metro, then the guys over at House of Blues might not book you, or, you know, you had like certain scenes and little cliques. And it seems like, I think part of why the music scene, Summerfest is a huge part of it, obviously, because it's been going on for such a long time. But you see like the evolution of the Paps Riverside. We have a really great non-com called 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, WYMS, which is, I think, on par with, you know, like KXP and, you know, a lot of the bigger non-commercial stations. It's a good community. It's a good place that we love music and we want to foster it and help each other. You know?
And I think Bob was really saying they come down and see us, but the same we go to their venues. I was just at the Riverside, actually the Pabst Theater for 2 different shows, the Todd Rundgren show and the Dweezil Zappa show. So I think,
So you like it funky.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's my thing. Yeah. So that's what I make a point, but I mean, same for the Pabst, the Riverside, the Joe and Leslie as far as the Rave and that whole, the ballroom complex. Yeah, we try to be knowledgeable about the venues and we go to see them all.
Okay, you mentioned Bob Rue. This is a market that now has the Franks brothers like overseeing, right? Wisconsin is kind of their baby now, is what it's become their head. So Madison seems to be the focus for some reason, which I guess would actually leave a lot of those headliners open for when you guys want to bring them back for the festival. If they're putting their headline play down there in Madison, where the Franks seemingly are spending most of their attention.
Well, it's interesting. They're doing shows that are at the BMO Pavilion with us this summer also. We've always had a good relationship with Live Nation in here. We buy a lot of their tours as they're
Have you always had a good relationship with the Franks?
Yeah, we have. We get along real well with them. We play nice with them also. So this is great.
Just curious how the market's going to change now that they're Live Nation here. Because they certainly aren't the same brand as Bob Rue.
Right.
Bob gets along with everybody.
Bob does. Yes, he does.
He is a businessman, and he's a smart guy that people like to work with.
Yeah, yeah, he is. As far as working with Live Nation, the Franks, though, as I was saying earlier, we buy in the amphitheater, a couple of tours every year from them that they have going through the market. This year it's Def Leppard Journey. That's their tour. So they're making a stop with us during Summerfest.
They should sell some beer.
And they will sell some beer, yeah. It's selling tickets too, which is great.
Being the home of beer and cheese, does that affect opposed to other markets in the country? Are you guys moving more product than most because this is a drinking town?
We sell a lot of beer. When you look at our ticket prices being what they are, which, like I said, this year, $21, you can find a way to get it free. You have to survive on your ancillaries. We survive on sponsorship and ancillaries, actually. The major
I've noticed
sponsors,
by your venue names, your sponsorship guys seem to be doing their job.
Yeah, the big sponsorships that we have on the big stages, and some of those hold 10 to 14,000 people. So you've got Miller Brewing, you've got Harley Davidson, you've got Briggs & Stratton, U.S. Cellular, Uline Corporation, BMO Harris Banks, American Family Insurance, all putting their names on there so we can get those big national acts to play on those stages and keep it at $21. And then, of course, we've figured out through the years how to maximize our beer profit.
Johnson Controls as well.
Johnson Controls. Sorry about that. And Uline.
And Uline. Got to cover all of our
lots of
great
stages.
sponsors,
That's right.
Exactly.
Don't want to forget anybody.
Clements.
Clements sauce.
I would think pouring rights would be a huge thing in this part of the world. Well, we're a block from the Pabst Theater, right? Like that's got to be a huge fight. Like the sponsorship guys got to just have them lined around the block, and who gets dibs on that?
But actually, as far as I primarily sponsored is Miller, and they're literally at all the stages.
Right. Yeah, we sell the product everywhere, and we sell a lot. We sell a lot of it. So
absolutely,
they're great partners.
Is there a cheese sponsor?
I don't think
there. Sausage spot.
Have you missed that?
I don't think
is that a hole I just
sponsor.
figured out?
Yeah.
It seems like in this market, a cheese sponsor would be a title sponsor, and it's the beer sponsor.
I don't think we have that.
The cheese epiphany.
You got the pouring rights, now you got the melting rights. I love it. We're inventing things here.
Right?
It's great.
You're going to come down and kick off the fondue bar or something?
It'll be genius.
Fondue stage.
Oh. The Melting Pot VIP Club.
Oh, nice. That is good. That's good.
Okay, so what are you guys excited about for this summer? What are the highlights?
Oh, there's so much good stuff. Start with a couple of the bigger names in the amphitheater. I mean, running the gambit from kicking off with Imagine Dragons to Dave Matthews on the first Sunday, going into the second week with tried for a couple of years to get J. Cole to perform. He's there.
Halsey Logic. Florida Georgia Line with BB Rexa, who managed to have a big single at the same time we announced it. That was great.
And then the weekend on the second.
Weekend, yeah.
Arcade Fire's with us this year. So it's kind of like picking 2 or 3 country shows, a couple of rock shows, a couple of hip hop things, a couple of pop things, 1 or 2 alternative rock bands, and that's usually kind of the mix, the formula that works.
And I think that some of that great stuff, like I think we mentioned earlier, you've got Jethro Tull's 50th anniversary, you got Little Uzi Vert, you got Kane Brown, you've got Greta Van Fleet. What else?
They're having a moment, Greta.
Yeah, Janelle Monáe.
What about local? Is there any huge local acts that are taking part this year?
Well, you've got the usuals.
So we've had a lot of success with anyone from Gold is a band that's we've kind of been helping out over the years. Local kind of dance pop band managed by a guy who's originally from Madison, who now manages bands and producers in New York. Very excited about them as always. Abby Jean.
She's great.
Violent Femmes have done really well in past years for you, right? Since they got back together? Big hometown boys?
They always pop in every couple of years.
Sure. Bodine's.
The Bodine's there. Now Sammy's gone. But
you mean in this part of the country that Bodine's still exist?
Yeah, without Sammy.
That's like
Sammy's
finding
gone.
a bag of Twinkies or something like that are out of date that somebody like discovered. They're
still fresh.
They're still good.
Yeah.
So yes, they still exist.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, we've got a really strong, the hip hop scene is strong locally, the indie rock scene, get all the bands from like the Promise Ring, who was like right around the time the Jimmy Eat World was big, how they kind of fostered the indie scene. So yeah, it's fun when you have a local act that starts to rise up in the community. We can put them in front of a lot of people that normally wouldn't see them, and some of those later daytime, early evening slots before a big national band that's going to draw 5,000 to 10,000 people. So we're all about helping the local musicians have that opportunity. Getting a Summerfest gig is a coveted spot. You work hard all year long, you get attention for us buyers, and then we're able to give them a shot.
And we're open, 11 days, noon to midnight, and 11 stages. There's plenty of opportunities to get everybody in here to play. So we try to.
Well, I say there's plenty of opportunities. We will never fulfill all the need.
There's always somebody
the
missing.
Demand is always going to be higher than the amount of space. And I always tell people, I wish we had unlimited budgets and I wish we had unlimited spaces. But at some point, we do have to cut it off.
All right, so what's the secret of the success? I mean, 50 years, you guys are going strong. You've built a brand that is nothing like it in the industry. Why does it work?
The thing that makes it important in this community in southeastern Wisconsin is the people that live here actually think about it as their festival. They say, you're coming down to our festival this year. You're coming to town to see our festival this year. It's a part of the fabric of the city of Milwaukee, which sounds a little corny, but it's really, really true. When they're talking about us in December and January, we announce bands. If we announce a headliner for the amphitheater, we get local TV on all the stations in the morning. All the drive time stations are doing stories about it. Evening News is doing stories about it. Color pictures in the newspapers or the print that's out there. So it's part of the fabric of Milwaukee, and that's what keeps it going. That, and then it hits every genre every year. You know, you can always come down. People come down. And it's their party. So we will do on a bad year, 840,000 people, 845,000 people. And
what's your per heads on that?
It's a wonderful thing. And I think our record was 1,035,000 in 11 days, which we realized was way, way too many people. It's too overcrowded. So our wheelhouse is really at 840 to 9.
I like that you're trying to not do what you've done in past years. You're trying to create a little more breathing room. That's
it's nice
unlike our industry in general.
Yeah, but I think that also has to do with the kind of aging of our society. I think when we all first started, it was always the goal was, let's get as many people in as we can. I think as you start to get older, you're going, well, wait a minute, there's some limits to this. We don't all have to be like cheek to cheek to have a great
But that being said, we want to hit all genres and all ages.
Is there a genre you won't book?
No, I don't think so. Well, I suppose there's something that we wouldn't put out there.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's family content. You guys are playing down the center of the road.
Yeah, family content. I mean, during the day, we're cognizant of the fact that of language. But once we get down to that 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and it starts going, and the language gets a little salty. Yeah. We do hip hop artists all the time, and the language can be there. Or hard rock guys, their language can be pretty rough. But
this year, we have some jazz. That's one of the things I think we'd like to do more. But as far as finding jazz artists that works within our
that are still alive and playing,
well, but also they can do. I mean, the perfect one would have been George Benson, who has pop hits, has critical jazz acclaim, and is used to playing in front of 30,000 people or so, right? In front of a large crowd. Compared to most of the jazz artists, are usually playing more like smaller clubs, 100 people.
Yeah, those shows kind of capacities died when the radio stations went away.
Yeah. So we could do more of that, but again, I'm happy we do have a Boney James this year, and that's actually really good for us. And I know for myself, I can always say that, like when I sit down with my family and they say, what do you have? And they're talking about specific things. What's the R&B that you have? When I talk to my family, we actually get together. I mean, to me, that's really important that we do have the R&B or the old school, and one that we didn't talk about, Sugar Hill Gang with
you're going way back.
Grandmaster Melly Mel, and
that's this year, yeah.
That's this year, and that's me is going to be one of my highlights to see that.
I mean, on the jazz tip, we've a guy like Kamasi Washington, where he's
so that's cool too, because that's a bunch of genres now.
Exactly.
It's interesting when we make our trip to LA and talk to people about how, you've seen the evolution of like all the jam bands, right? We had a really, really great run, which is, I think, kind of then maybe gone a little bit more into like the bluegrass world that continues to do very well for us. But it seems like the jazz jam mixed in with like an R&B vibe seems to be like a lot of kids.
And not only that, it's always evolving. I mean, I think if we talked about what things we were doing in the 70s, we had diversity. We never would have thought that you'd have somebody with a jazz and a jam band kind of background that would come together. But it's evolving. It's always evolving. And here 50 years later that we're still doing things. And hopefully we're always kind of stretching some boundaries.
So one of the things that when you've been going as long as we have and getting 800, 900,000 people to the grounds every year is not a problem. One of the things we're doing for people in their 40s or 50s or that are still wanting to get out of the house, go to Summerfest, but they don't want to be there at 10 o'clock at night when it's primarily, high school kids to early 30s. We have our headliners all go on at 10 o'clock at night. But we started doing some...
You doing like an early bird special for like us older
if you will.
It is, basically.
You can shoot a show at 5 o'clock, be in bed by 8:30, like not mess with any of those kids.
That's it. That's right.
Nice little matinee.
Yeah. I'm not going to name names, but Mark Solheim at the Pabst said to me, he's like, dude, There was like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm trying to remember who it was.
Sounded just like him. Dude.
There's a lot of times we'll get calls from agents a month out or 2 months out saying, here's an opportunity. Somebody's decided to tour. Do you have any more room? Sorry, we're out of money. Sorry, we're out of headlining spots. And Neil's agent called up and asked the question. It wasn't a very expensive show, but we said, well, we're trying to do some stuff on Saturday afternoon around 4 or 5 o'clock. Why don't we called it our daytime headliner. Why don't we put him in? We convinced them that it was a good thing, and we had a near capacity crowd at 4 in the afternoon.
What's capacity?
There was about 7,500.
He's got to be the biggest audience he's played for in a long time headlining.
Yeah.
No disrespect, but he's a ballroom act.
I hear you. I hear you.
Sure. And that was...
This makes it a free show, which is...
A free show.
Bigger crowds happen.
So I ran into Mark after that, and he was like, why don't you guys do more of this stuff? Because it's like, I have money. I want to come down to the festival. I just don't want to be here when it starts getting crazy after 8 o'clock.
And he has kids.
And I have kids, and so I don't have to...
So there's a guy that does all the punk rock shows in the market. That's really funny.
You'll figure that one out, huh?
He's the only person in the market that booked Arcade Fire, and it was 14 years ago at a 200-person club called the Mad Planet, and it took 14 years for us to convince them to come back. You know, Mark's always been ahead of the curve. I mean,
14 years ahead is not going to really pay those bills, though.
It took a while. I mean, like when I was first moved here, 1990 through the early 2000, I don't know when they took over the Pabst initially. So it was like the Pabst first, and then it was the Riverside, and then it was Turner. And basically what we were usually experiencing throughout the course of the calendar year is like, if you wanted to see the next, you know, whatever, the British band that's making, you know, noise over there is coming to the States for their first tour, you know, they'll do Boston, they'll do Philly, they'll do Detroit or Chicago, they'll go to Minneapolis, and they would always skip Milwaukee.
Sounds like you got a beef with Marty Diamond.
Oh, no. Actually, we're on, it's taken a long time, but Marty
now we're on the Marty train. So
but it was Gary and it was Solheim basically taking a chance and proving that our market is more diverse musically and that we're more active. That's, you know, we're just not like a meat and potatoes rock town like a lot of people think we are, or it's just country, that a lot of those bands that would normally not play here started playing here and started selling out. You know, I remember Alabama Shakes. They played here right when it was starting to go and sold out. I think they moved them from Turner to the Pabst, and they went from the Pabst to the Riverside, and that went clean. And like, they were really, our audience was.
But I think we find quite often that, especially when you talk to agents and you say, we've got this festival, it's on 75 acres, and we're on the lake, and we've got 900,000 people. And it's like, yeah. Until they actually come here. They actually see
come to the event, right?
Oh, wow. Right. Now I see what you're talking about. And that is really, so we try to get as many agents or people in the business to come out and see it, even hopefully like yourself. Because, you know, it's one thing, again, to say that there's this festival in Milwaukee that does all this great business. But until you actually see this, it's hard to see how special it is until you actually experience it.
And we try to take some chances. I mean, you mentioned Alabama Shakes. Was it 3 years ago? We did Alabama Shakes and Chris Stapleton together in the amphitheater.
That's an interesting combo. And cool enough to work, though.
And it did. It worked. It worked great. We weren't sure how it was going to go. Korn wasn't sure how it was going to go. You know, the manager of Chris. But
they're both red light acts, so that makes it kind of nice to experiment in-house.
Let's take a shot at it, and it worked great. You know, and then then last year we put together the package for 2 days of Tom Petty and Chris Stapleton, because Chris Stapleton idolizes Tom Petty. So that they did our place for 2 days, and I think they did Wrigley for 1. So we take some chances, different things, you know.
And sometimes it can be out of necessity, or where you have to put a couple of acts together in a certain genre because
1 + 1 = 3 kind of thing. Fill the room.
You know, a lot of acts play Bonnaroo, they play Firefly. Some of them stick around for maybe Electric Forest or whatever the one is in Chicago that I can't think
of.
Well, Palooza's after. That's
when they come back from Europe and they go to Laos.
But we lose a lot of them to Glastonbury, and so
Readings and whatever. Yeah.
Right. So we're stuck sometimes. Like, okay, well, let's put 2 or 3 acts together. Let's create a package instead of buying something that is the agency has already put together. And to Bob's credit, I mean, you obsessed. I'm not going to joke on like Alabama Shakes, Chris Stapleton, this is going to happen. You were like on the phone 3 months convincing everybody. And that was the first show like that they did. And it sold great and musically. And So it's fun when you can do stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, the audience stayed for both acts, which was perfect. I mean, even though the genres weren't exactly the same, people stuck around for both shows. So we had 23,000 people. You know, it was great.
But I don't think it's different than any other promoter. You've got to be creative. You've got to figure out ways to make the dollars you have get the best acts that you can.
Well, I think you guys have to be more creative than most because you have to convince people to leave the house more than once during your 11 days because you're counting on repeat business.
Right.
Whereas promoters don't necessarily need to get the same people out within 2 weeks. And you guys need to be so diverse with what you're doing. That's really a huge feather in your cap that works every year.
Yeah. The other thing that's different for us is that we literally are actively trying to draw these 3 different generations at any time. So baby boomers, the Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, they're all our audience. And I've seen this. We have another festival in town called Irish Fest, but they make a point of having Irish rock. They have old traditional Irish music.
Dance groups, Irish tradition.
Yeah, and all of that. They put it all together, and everybody is into it. Everybody buys in. That's hopefully what we have instead of somebody saying, well, it's I don't go to that because they only play that kind of music. We're hopefully trying to get them all to come down.
So before I let you guys go, the agents that are out there that don't have the Tom Pettys, well, nobody does anymore, but the Chris Stapletons and the Alabama Shanks, the baby agents at APA and ICM and William Morris that want to get you guys on the phone, that want to break their acts, that want to get those beloved new breaking slots. What are the things you're looking for when you're going to give somebody a chance? Because you guys do give some of these up-and-comers some shots, right?
We
so
do.
what are those things that you're looking for to hook someone up? What do they need to have going for them?
And there's emerging artists. We do that series, which is great.
We have an emerging artist series that's kind of cherry-picking acts from all over the country that are independent bands or
You just throwing darts, or is there rhyme or reason who you giving love to?
It's a mixed bag. I mean, I would say that we run the gambit of from the smallest local agency that just books local bands to regional agencies that are booking bands around the Midwest to a lot of the indie agencies, all the way up to the CAs, William Morris, and Paradigm. So I guess we're lucky because we have such a diverse range.
And the amount of time that we have, the number of days. Big window, but there's 11 days in all those stages. So
okay, that's fascinating, but you guys didn't answer the fucking question.
Well, I mean, the barometers for...
No, I feel for that kid that's frustrated at his desk. Like, what does it take to get you guys on the phone to give him a shot? Well, what does he need to do?
I think he just needs to be playing gigs and getting songs. I mean, it used to be that, it was very simple. You would play a show, you'd go out and sell product at a store, you'd get on the radio. If you had the resources, you get a lot of press. We find out about you. We talk to all of the other promoters, from the smallest clubs to the bigger promoters, the radio stations. We still do that. So if you're making noise, we're going to find you.
And if they want to send us something, or an agent gives us a call for a band, we do our little meeting twice a week or 3 times a week. There's 4 or 5 of us sit in a room, and if there's new stuff, we open up YouTube on the screen and we listen to it and we see what's going on, and if we like it and we can fit it in.
So it starts with a buzz. There has to be a buzz first. There has to be a reason.
Yeah, this isn't the place to say we've only played 1 gig, but we really want to showcase what we got.
Do you get that phone call? I bet you do.
And here's the thing. Here's the battle you have sometimes with the national agent, where they'll have a baby band that they want you to do. They'll give you a price and you go, I can take a local band, pay half of that, and do 3 times as many people as your guys are going to do, because nobody knows who you are yet. If you want to come in here and get seen, at least make it so we can afford to pay you to come in. Don't overprice your act. Don't say you have to be $2,000 or $3,000. We can't do it. If you want to come in for $500-$600, so we can pay a local band $500 to $1,000 and do 5,000 people if the day is right.
Sure.
Yes.
And I guess the best example I can think of is Panic at the Disco. That Scotty pulled that off. And back then it was how much?
So I can't take credit for that. That was Bob and Andrew Simon. Where Andrew called up, needed a favor. I got a band, Panic at the Disco, starting to break. How much? $25,000. Well, we got $12,000 left in the budget. They come in and basically, they went from being very small band to a very big band really quickly.
This is like Imagine Dragons too.
So we have a couple of those stories where it's like we booked Imagine Dragons 7-8 years ago or whenever they started for $500, right when the record came out
on a small stage
as a support act,
and they kept getting bigger and bigger, and we had to keep moving them to a bigger stage and a bigger stage. And by the time we got it, it was the biggest stage we could put, non-amphitheater.
So was the act or was it Summerfest?
That time it was the act.
That was the act.
That time it was the act.
I just want to thank you so much for taking time and telling us about Summerfest on Promoter 101.
No problem, man.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. That's Milwaukee Summerfest team bringing it for you live. It's great to have those guys on the podcast.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein. Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller.
John Schur.
Marcia Vlasic.
Mike Fruitman. Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz.
Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
It's the name of the podcast, so we can't avoid it. It's time for some Promoter 101 tweets of the week. Dan, start here. That moment when you earned your next level of airline status.
This should be like a Traveler 101, but I think the entire industry can appreciate this. Alaska Airline MVP Gold.
How about this? When you get pitched the lead singer solo and unplugged of the band no one has really cared about since 1993.
Ah, cool. Well, I think we need a write-off for the end of the year, so maybe we can help you out.
How about this? When someone asks for a favor in a very condescending tone.
Sure, no problem. Fuck you very much.
When you think you're going to get out of tonight's show, only to find out that the comps were included in the morning count.
Yeah, that one just hurts you to the bone.
And this one, when an agency spammed you 7 times with the same email.
Unsubscribe, please!
That'll do it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. You can follow Dan on Twitter. He's at The Jew.
The Jew.
Hi, I'm Holly Gleason, editor of Woman Walk the Line, here at Promoter 101, where they know how to get it done.
In our second segment of the week here, we're going to be joined by CAA's Brian Hill, here with the war story.
What do you have for us, dude?
This goes back to probably 94, 95, when I was at PGA.
You were a professional golfer?
Yes. So I worked at PGA when I first got to Nashville, and one of the first things I did was had to book a West Coast tour on Widespread Panic. And this was very, very early years playing the West Coast. It might have been their first West Coast. I don't really know.
Before jam music and weed went together?
I suppose. I had them in Santa Barbara and maybe San Luis Obispo. I can't remember. This is about Santa Barbara. I sold them to a promoter. They were eating catering before the Santa Barbara gig, and I think it was at UC Santa Barbara, but it wasn't the school. And evidently, one of the guys in the band goes to the promoter at catering and goes, "Hey, this chicken is undercooked, like severely undercooked. You're going to kill us. Somebody's got to do this." And the promoter took the plate out of the guy's hand, a band guy, and I guess threw it across the room or at the guy. I don't quite remember.
At the musician or at the caterer?
Either at the musician or just across the room. I don't know what happened. Anyway, the brouhaha ensued, and we got the call. This is before everybody had email, cell phone, all that stuff, right? PGA was sharing one AOL account at this point, just to give you an idea of when this was. PGA Music at AOL.com.
Probably had more than one fax.
Exactly. We had 2 fax lines, that's for sure. And with the curly paper.
Thermo.
So we go, the phone rings at night, and then it's explained to me, and I'm like, oh, crap. What am I going to do about this? I had to fly out to California the next day on the next gig and apologize to the band and also have a stern talking to the promoter. And needless to say, I don't think that promoter ever touched the band again.
So never, ever, ever serve undercooked chicken and then throw it at the artist.
That's always a good rule.
Promoter 101 with cooking tips with Brian Hill.
Just the tips.
You should watch out for a feature interview coming to us in weeks to come with CAA's Brian Hill. It's just weird to say CAA. I'm still thinking of him as Paradigm's Brian Hill, but it even goes back further when he was PGA's Brian Hill. And I guess if you even go further back that, Luke, it was CAA Beverly Hills Brian Hill. So it is full circle. I sense a theme.
I think his rider actually says Third Coast Agent of the Year, Brian Hill.
And he is multiple times, I believe.
Good man right there, Brian Hill.
Like Brian Hill, he joins us on the interview to talk about foodie stuff and his love for music and his family, and he's just one hell of a guy.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz.
Rick Barrow.
Nick Light.
Mark Geiger.
This is Lee Anderson.
Kevin Lyman.
John Giddings. Jim Runge. Jeff White.
Brian Zisk.
Chuck Randall.
Brian O'Connell.
Andrea Johnson.
Adam Parsons.
Darielle Hyatt.
Ben Mensch.
Jamie Miller.
Billy Wayne Davis.
Brandon Frankel.
Mitch LaFon.
Jake Gould.
Gary Smith. Jeff Cohen.
You are on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
And the final interview at episode 96 of Promoter 101, we've got Primary Talent's Martin Hopewell here to share the history of the International Live Music Conference, London's International Music Conference, every year in March.
Martin Hopewell, thank you so much.
Well, I'd like to say it was a pleasure, but you know how much I don't like microphones.
Well, for someone that doesn't like microphones, you were the creator of this conference.
Yeah, I got that one a bit wrong, didn't I? I don't know if I ever intended to speak as much as I have to, but normally you see it's all a cheat because I normally have these carefully worked out scripts to read from, and then I can stand there sounding very relaxed and chatting away, and people think, oh, yes, you're so calm. Well, it's only because I spent 4 nights without sleep writing every single bloody word and moving them all around, you know.
So you practice?
Oh, God, yes. Other than that, behind a microphone, my attention span becomes rather less than that of a goldfish. So I wouldn't even know where I'd begun a sentence and how it was going to end, you know.
So I'm a huge fan of this conference in particular because I find it to have a more worldly vibe than most of the music conferences in the industry.
Yeah.
You have the Russians, the Ukrainians, the Germans. Everyone comes and you get to see everyone's different problems that they're facing. Really gives you a much better understanding of how much easier we have it in the first world country, that we're not dealing with the front lines of wars moving past us, and we're not dealing with the economies of scale that they have to deal with, and also not dealing with some of the governments that will arrest you for an artist saying something about gay rights, or the clothes on an artist have to be a certain way, or the government will have a problem with a pop star if they're too short. These are things I didn't know existed until I came to this conference.
I mean, you're absolutely right, but that's something that's emerged during the years ILMC's been running, I think, because when we had the first one, you know, we held the first meeting, which was supposed to be just a one-off meeting. It was never supposed to be, you know, a regular conference. I had no intention of getting into the conference business at all. I knew nothing about it. I hadn't got a clue how to put a conference on, and no interest in finding out. It was just a meeting of the major figures at the time to discuss some particular issues that were going on. We'll talk about that later. But at the very first meeting, because word spread about the thing and people were turning up from other places that weren't in my address book, and the Berlin Wall was still up. This was in 1989. So Eastern Europe was not even really on the table as a place to talk about. I remember there was one guy who actually made it out of East Germany. God knows how he did it. I think he hitchhiked across Europe, got all the paperwork together and everything, somehow probably escaped over the top of the Berlin Wall without getting shot, and turned up.
You really wanted it, huh?
Oh, well, yeah, but for him it was like a real sort of mission. He had to be there in that room full of all these famous or so-called famous promoters and people. And there was another guy there who went on to become a real face of ILMC in the early days and became a good friend of mine, a guy called Yuri Makarov. And we all thought he'd come from Russia. And it's like, wow, this is amazing. And these people are going to be nuking us any minute of actually this guy's come over to the conference. And of course, it turned out that Yuri was actually from Estonia, which we just thought was Russia. But of course, now we've learned that our maps have got bigger. So we found out where some of these places are. You know?
Zoom in a little.
It was like that. So really, in the very first place, ILMC, I guess, was for, you know, the people involved in the touring map at the time. And that didn't include a lot of these areas you're talking about. But of course, over the years, we've seen the emergence of, you know, what we call the emerging markets. So we had historically a regular session here called the Emerging Markets Place. There's a bit of a naff title, but, you know, marketplace, emerging markets place, you know.
The new places that are now in business doing shows.
Oh, yeah, but now we've had to drop the title. The reason the sessions sort of disappeared off the menu is because you can't keep on referring to markets as emerging markets when every year they're having like 6 different major festivals in their territory and all the bands are going through there and stuff like that. The touring map's become very big. You know, agents have had to spend more on bigger maps.
I think that's a good thing, more options for everybody, especially since there's more acts on the road and there's so much more traffic.
I guess. I mean, this is a big conversation. I mean, I guess the problem then becomes, it's like, how many concerts can your average band play in the course of a year without dying, you know, because the world is now such a big place to tour around, you know.
Well, really, I guess it has to do with each act individually and how much they want to work.
Yeah.
Opening up those options so the acts don't play the same 20 markets over and over again is a good, healthy thing for their career.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Again, you're completely right. It depends on the act. If it's an artist who tours once every decade or something, then you can quite happily keep on going back to the same sort of places. But if it's somebody who wants to live on the road, then inevitably you end up being a little bit more adventurous.
So the conference doesn't take itself that seriously and never has. There's a tone to it, a tone of cheeky humor.
Yes.
With the Arthur Awards, second most offensive agent, is that right?
It's the second least offensive agent. And that was because in the very first year, we had the least offensive agent award. We had the most strokeable manager, the Liga's favourite festival, the first venue to come into your head. which always made me laugh.
Best assistant too. I like that you guys do that. I think that's a nice touch.
Yes. The problem was that the first year we had this thing, and Carl, it was only a joke. You see, the Arthurs were a joke in the bar. No, after the second year, which was supposed to be just part 2 of part 1, and then that would be the end. And then it became apparent that I was actually stuck with this thing. I mean, really. And every year kind of going, I can't keep doing this. This is just crazy. And the people I was working with in my office going, Martin, what on earth are you doing? You're supposed to be booking bands and not spending 6 months, thinking about this. But anyway, where were we? Oh, yeah. So the first year that we had the Arthur Awards, which was ILMC 7, and we had the least offensive agent. And Carl Leighton Pope was doing this thing as like a joke in the bar. It's like a piss take of awards, backslapping, best this, best that, And he came up to me, he said, well, look, we've got a bit of a problem here because you've won it. He said, well, you can't have it because you've organised the conference. I said, yeah, fucking can. Of course. I'd love to be the least offensive agent. So then in following years, we had to make it the second least offensive agent so that by definition, I was always going to be the most least offensive. But no, you're right. I mean, it does have that sense of humour. That's made it really good fun. Last night, I was in a room full of people who'd been to between, more than 25 years, and 17 of us had been to all 30. And there were some great faces, some legendary characters in there. But you're in that room with all these really seasoned professionals. Any one of them could be in here with far more justification being interviewed by you. And they're all like 12-year-old kids. They're so excited about being given a new type of laminate. And we've created founder member status now, which means you get a little maroon star on your laminate. And they're so thrilled. There was one German promoter who will have to remain nameless, who had to leave early. So we had a special ceremony for him out the corridor, which involved him having to kneel down in front of me so I could present him with his new lanyard.
You knighted him?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. And that's the way it's always been. The lesson from that, I suppose, is one, the whole point at the ILMC was to bring everybody together and make everyone realize that they were all kind of the same character and that you could talk openly. It was always about being open and sharing information and communicating irrespective of geography, location and competition. It was around the time of Band-Aid, and it was like, leave your egos at the door and just come in and talk. This is, of course, before everyone sold out to the corporates, and now nobody can say fucking anything. But it was also, I think, part of it was also that, organising something like this could be really, really dull. It could be so fucking dull if you didn't play games with it, So for me, it was to keep me awake. But also, I suppose the message is don't ever take any of this stuff seriously because, we're not curing cancer. We're not landing moon rockets or something. We're in the music business and having the time of our lives, So just don't believe your own publicity, because 6 months after you stop doing it, you'll be forgotten. There'll be somebody else in the chair, So just have fun when you're doing it.
The conference has an interesting vibe to it. It's fueled by alcohol.
Yes.
Most conferences are, but this one's special. The bar stays open as late as people are drinking. The hotel staff is very supportive of that, too. And the bar staff is part of the party. And the evening certainly revolves around that bar. But not only is it alcohol, there's a camaraderie of people in that bar. There's no ego. There's no attitude. Anyone walks up to anyone, and people are very friendly. Once in the afternoon, when people are doing the meetings in the hallways, people are a little more closed off, and you can't just walk up to anybody because people have their agendas. But in the bar, once somebody has a pint in their hand, anyone can walk up to anyone, and there's really no attitude about that.
It's funny because it's always been like that. And I suppose as new people get invited, because it's all invitation only, but members can nominate other people to be invited. But as new people arrive, they come in here and it's kind of like you wonder what they're expecting, because of course what they're going to be confronted with is a 30-year-old story, which is actually incomprehensible if you hadn't been involved in it, because there's all this weird shit going off everywhere and funny, strange titles for everything and all these weird traditions going on. But the nice thing is, normally within a few hours, they've got the idea and they just join in the party. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a very welcoming vibe here and people get it. And I have to say that for most people, once you've got it, then, for a lot of people, it's become like an essential fixture in their calendar. Not so much because people come here and they make a load of money. The deals that are being done, I wish I had a commission, even a tiny commission, especially of the Live Nation deals that were done in the first place when we introduced everybody to, anyway, we won't talk about that, but I could be a very, very wealthy man instead of impoverished. But yeah, it's like that. It's a very friendly place. And I'm saying that completely openly because, as you know now, as of 5 years ago, then I kind of retired from the job of carrying ILMC on my shoulders and passed it on to Greg Palmley, who is now the head honcho. So I can say it now as a delegate. This is a really fun place to come to. They all love it.
So taking that off your plate when you handed the conference over, that seemed like it probably took a strain off you that you were much looking forward to since the year one?
It's a mixture of things. Actually, it's a collision of things. And this is going to sound pompous, but I've always believed since when I first came into the business, I was a complete dickhead, like most people are when they're young and they come into the music business. And famously, I went to as a young agent in the UK, we were booking colleges all the time. So colleges have social secretaries. They had a conference. So the young agents would go along to the social secretaries conference to meet all the social secretaries and sell them their shitty groups, And I remember sitting at one and they had a panel and they had a guy, and I wish I could remember his name because I'd love to apologize to him, his children, his grandchildren, and generations of them, who just happened to be on the stage wearing a suit with a big cigar and not much hair on his head. Then for some reason, I then got so outraged by the fact that this old bastard up there, who's he to talk to us about la, 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 even wrote a letter to this is awful to admit, to a thing called College Event, which was like whatever, Polestar in America, but it was for the events thing in the UK, complaining about it, which resulted in me quite correctly being marched in front of the Agents Association board and plonked on a carpet with my boss and told off, for being a complete prat, which I was. Where was I going with that? Maybe we'll delete that later, but what I'm saying is, ever since I was started in the business, I had this belief that there's a shelf life on being in a business which is essentially a young man's game. And I think there's a point beyond which you should just recognize the fact when bands are coming in to see you, interview you to be their agent, and they're younger than your own children, it's like, move over and let somebody else have a go, because all you're doing otherwise is hanging onto your pay packet. That was a long answer to the first part, but apart from that, 25 years, you kind of end up running out of useful things to contribute towards a business which is changing around you, And I used to do that really heavily. I used to write all the scripts for all the chairmen of the sessions to tell them what they should be saying and, in sentences and who they should ask in the crowd about this and that. So you burn that one out very quickly. So it's time to hand on to somebody else to take over and have another 25 years out of fun of it for themselves. You're running out of ideas, but also my right hand in the ILMC, Alia Dan, who passed away last year, but she was living in Australia and she just had to stop. It was getting too much for her coming and going from Australia to do it. And also Peter Maloney, who was my left hand, if you like, who was doing all the accounts and stuff, all gratis. He's the finance director at Primary Talent. He also wanted to pack in. And I thought, I can't. And I'm living in the south of France now most of the year. So it's like, come on, own up. You can't be in the south of France pretending to be at the hub, at throbbing heart of the music industry when you're not. And you're old. And your left and right hand people have gone. And Greg was there and he was really, really keen to do it. With Greg, it was more like an inheritance. It's hard to explain that, but Greg gets it. He loves ILMC. He was working with me on it. I don't have another hand that he could have been, but he would have been the middle hand, if you see what I mean. And because Greg would be my co-conspirator on designing topics and craziness and all that kind of stuff. And so Greg was absolutely there, ready and waiting to be the natural inheritor of the thing. And he's doing a phenomenal job. He's moved it into areas that I wouldn't have even thought of, the stuff that he's doing,
It seems like he's got some very cool content. Staples to this conference, too, that are kind of neat. Unfortunately, he's not here this year because he got hurt. But Ed Bicknell is one of the most entertaining men I've ever met. And he always does a session.
Yeah.
And there's a handful of those. Obviously, Carl Layton Pope is a very big voice in this room. You guys used to just give him a session to open the conference with?
Used to, yeah, Carl. ILMC used to be just one room with a chairman, no real panels or anything. And that's how I wish it was now. I genuinely do, because everybody would be there listening to everything with nothing preset. You'd just be picked on to talk in the room. And then I think one year we had the idea of doing what we call breakout sessions when we grew into a Friday afternoon as well as the Saturday and the Sunday. And Carl, there was one thing we had called Talking Shop, and Carl was doing that. And that kind of grew very rapidly to a point where after a few years, he ended up taking over the Friday afternoon in the big room for like 400 or 500 people or something. So pretty well everybody who was there for his thing. And
it was a long session, right? It was like 90 minutes to 2 hours or something?
Well, I kind of like long sessions. I don't like this business of chopping everything off after an hour. I mean, after an hour, it's about long enough to introduce the dozen people who are going to be preset talking, and then it's time to stop, But yeah, Carl was one of our great characters at ILMC. People who you'd only know them in a business context, but then you find out they're also really fucking entertaining as well and have a brain on their shoulders, and a real opinion to put forward. So you spot these kind of the entertainment stars that are in the business chairs that can do that sort of stuff, But someone like Ed Bicknell, he should have had his own TV series. If Ed ever hears this, we're all really sorry he's not here this year. I'm really glad you're stepping in to help out and fill his broken boots, because he's broken his leg in
I
two
definitely
places.
don't feel I can fill that seat, but I'll fake it the best I can.
Oh, just do it differently.
He's an icon.
The thing with Ed is that when he's interviewing people, if you're the interviewee, it's really hard to get a word in edgewise, because I tried to interview him once. I did him as the breakfast meeting.
Oh, you reversed it?
Yeah, so I was interviewing him. And when I listened to the recording afterwards, you could hear this sort of low rumble in the background and just Ed talking. And the low rumble in the background was me trying to get a word in edgewise to ask him a question. Hilarious.
No dead air.
No.
It's developed into a very interesting thing, but it's also grown our business in a very phenomenal way. American promoters don't seem to come here, either do American agents. And I get that our system's a little different, and we've got Polestar, and we've got Billboard, and we've got IAVM, and 10 other versions of these things that happen too. But the managers and some of the record execs and the agents that control the artist's future in my country don't always come to those conferences, but they're all here.
You could get me off into one there, but a parallel case, I suppose, for ILMC historically would be people would always say, where are the record companies? And, we were a little bit upset about that, and we tried to really invite the record companies to be there and have some representation, and we succeeded to an extent. But, the conversations quite often were all about, well, when the record business was important, when live industry was like a service industry to the record industry, there was a lot of complaint about that. But then you think about it, you think, well, hang on, if I work at a record company and somebody asks me to pay whatever it is to come to this conference full of promoters and agents and venues and stuff for 3 days, what is there any more interest for them to come to this than there would be for me to go to one of theirs? Would I want to go and sit in a record industry conference for 3 days? Now, you're right about the American business. And I'd like to say it's because it's a long way away, but there's loads of people here from Australia and from Southeast Asia and Japan and God knows where else. So historically, I suppose the Atlantic has been more than just a large stretch of water as far as the industry is concerned, because there has been this kind of self-contained American industry, which is understandable. If you've got a chunk of land as big as North America to play in, we've got these little tiny islands and sections of Europe to play in, and you've got that huge, great continent, then it's understandable that would be quite enough for you to play in, On the other hand, when so much American business is coming over here and so much of it's being originated in the States, you think that they should maybe turn up to be a face behind the voice,
And that seems to have changed the business over here in the last 10 to 15 years. The American agencies opening up shop here and buying up some of the other agencies.
It's one of the reasons why ILMC started, by the way. 2 motives. One was back in the late 80s, there was no meeting place outside of America. There was MEDEM for the record industry. There was nowhere else to go. There was nowhere for all these characters who are here to meet up. There was a new music seminar in New York, and that really was a band showcase place. Handful of us would go over there just scouting out some new talent, And I was over there and I ran into a couple of Europe's leading promoters who had found their way there for whatever reason. And we were standing outside the hotel that was the base of the thing. One was Herman Sherman, who is now like a legendary promoter of the famous Versta festivals, one of the biggest festivals in the world. And the other one was Rune Lem from Norway. Rune's, for as long as I've been around, been like the number one promoter in Norway. And you're standing in the open air talking to these 2 guys, and after about 10 minutes, you realise they're both just looking at me. They're not talking to each other, and you go, you do know each other, don't you? They go, no. And I said, this is Runa, this is Herman. And it's, oh, Herman, oh, Runa. Yes, I've heard all about you. Because they're doing the same tours, They'd never actually met. And I just thought, this is insane. What, you mean none of you guys have met each other? This is crazy. So that was one of the motives. But the other thing was that at the time there were some industry issues going on. And they involved things that in fact are now quite current again. Nothing's new in heaven or earth. And one of them was the fact that back in the late 80s, it's funny because I had so famous run-ins with very funny ones with the lovely Peter Grosslight over this a few years later, which I won't repeat. He's a lovely guy, Peter. I liked him a lot, but we disagreed on a few points. And it was over the issue of American agents starting to book their acts directly into Europe. Normally, what had happened before that is the American agents would have some sort of relationship with one or two agents in Europe and
trade bands back and forth.
Yeah, that's right. They'd start to break that down. And also you had, I'm pretty sure it was Michael Cole in Canada, and I think it was Marcel, actually, lovely Marcel Avrem, who's just having some major birthday at the moment. And this was the tour producer idea. So here's the offer, direct the band. We're offering you a chunk of money to buy your entire tour and all the rights to everything within it. And it's a huge, great big check with lots of zeros at the end. And here's a sheet that breaks it all down. And at the bottom of it says agent commission 0, right? And what was happening was that you had 3 very unfortunate characters in Europe at the time who became the battleground for this. Because, in Germany and France and Italy, you had tons of different promoters you could go to that, if one wanted to go one way with the argument, you'd find somebody else who'd go with the other one. But in Switzerland, Scandinavia and Holland, there was really just Andre Bashir, Leon Ramekers and, EMA Telstar, Thomas and his crowd. And they became the battleground. It was almost like you actually had the European agents ganging up together, getting hold of these guys and saying, you deal with these American agents and we'll take our business elsewhere. Or you deal with these tour producer deals that cut out agents and we'll take our business elsewhere. And the poor fuckers didn't know where to go. Those were 2 of the main issues that were at the very first ILMC. And here we are again in the same situation.
The global touring has changed things quite a bit.
I didn't think I had anything to say here, Dan, and it seems that I'm talking the hind legs off a donkey.
You mentioned being called in front of the Agent Association. I don't think we have this in America. This is like being called in front of the bar for a lawyer? What is this?
Well, it's a little bit dull and a little bit boring, and I'm not sure I'm aware of the facts anymore, but it used to be the case that to trade as a entertainment agent in the UK, you had to be licensed. I mean, at the time, it was really important to be a member of the Agents Association.
Does that still exist?
It does exist, but just to explain, to back it up, because in fact, later on in my life, I became a member of the council of the Agents Association, and I'd go along to the meetings with these guys, and there was myself and Paul Fenn at Asgard, who were regarded as being the contemporary agents to talk about the thing, because most of the people there, who were lovely people, but their business really was variety. And they were dealing with, there was an application for a license from a guy who was on a milk round or something, but wanted to become some local entertainment agent in Nether Wapping to put out children's entertainers or something. That was the kind of thing. So it didn't really have an awful lot to do with my business. But interestingly enough, after ILMC started, when we started that, suddenly it was like we kind of opened the door. Everybody wanted to form associations. And all the associations, some of them formed out of ILMC by accident, like the Production Services Association, which is a big organization now, started out when we had a room to fill at one year, and I asked a friend of mine who was a good mate, Mick Klaczynski, who was a fantastic production manager, would you do something? And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, go and talk to a load of the production guys. What do we talk about? We'll talk about forming an association or something. And see what I mean? I'm not claiming any credit, but I mean, some of this stuff just happened.
You fill in a room and something came out of that.
But with the sort of issues I was just talking about in Europe at the time, shortly after ILMC started, there was an attempt to form something called the European Agents Association, which was the EIA. And then I had the idea of forming something called the EIEIO. Old MacDonald had a farm. But anyway, we couldn't think of the words to go with the acronym. This was a very loose thing. This was more like a sort of meeting of the mafia bosses. It was hilarious because you get all these guys together who were at war. I mean, There were several people there at the time I would cheerfully have had bumped off if I could have got away with it. And people would just arrive there. It'd be like a Peter Sellers film or something, and they'd just sit around this big table, and there was these big silences before somebody started the meeting, because nobody would look at each other. And it ended up that we all got on really well. We'd all been nicking each other's groups and stuff, but hey, we ended up having a good time. But it only lasted a couple of years. We were talking about, things like bringing back a system where when an act, we use the term signed up by an agency, but the point was that nobody was being signed up by agency.
There's no paper.
No, which is just...
I can walk out of the door anytime they want.
Yeah, which is just completely crazy. Or the agent could walk out the door carrying all of his acts with him. So you could bring in some young guy off the street, teach them how to do the job, literally how to use a calculator or something and how to add up and how to work out what 10% of something was. And then 2 years later, they got like a nice, healthy roster of artists. And, well, I'm going off because I've got a better offer. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. How did that happen? Well, so that sort of stuff was being talked about. But then we found eventually, I think, that there were too many conflicts of interest knocking around and we couldn't maintain it. But at least we tried,
So you guys have a very unique registration process, whereas you have to be invited and you have to have two people sponsor you to get that invitation that are already part of the system. Was that to weed out people that just aren't really in the industry, that are just looky-loos?
No, ILMC was never intended to be a commercial enterprise. It didn't start out like that. I didn't do the ILMC to make money. I said famously one year I'd make more money out of booking a fabulous Thunderbirds tour of 12 dates in Europe than I do out of working all year on planning the ILMC. It wasn't about that. It was a business meeting. It wasn't an attempt to get into the business of organising conferences, And if you're going to have a business meeting, well, then you invite whoever's going to be relevant to it. And we had a fixed capacity as well. We're trying to do everything in one room, and you can't put 2,000 people into a room and have a nice open conversation, can you? So we kept the capacity down. We kept it down to sort of 250 for a few years, then 300, then 400 as it inevitably grew.
Especially because I'm certain Claudio wouldn't let anybody else talk.
Claudio is one of our characters. Claudio, you've had him do this thing, haven't you?
He was on last year. Yeah, he's great.
He just dragged me around Hyde Park. All I wanted to do was to walk 20 metres and have a breath of air, and I ended up having to walk all the way around the bloody duck pond and back with him. But, he's lovely. So it wasn't really about weeding people out. It's just that in the early days, I was not trying to organise what I called a proper conference. I was always saying, this is not a proper conference. I also was saying, I never, ever want to see fucking goodie bags and bloody trade stands and sponsors and stuff like that. Of course, all that stuff's inevitably happened. But I meant it, and I kind of still mean it. Problem is, if you're going to do it well, you can't do it well at this sort of level without a whole team of people, and it's got to come from somewhere. And it would have been stupid in the early days if you turn up and there's a couple of hundred people and you got bloody sponsors plastered everywhere. It would have looked ridiculous. But of course, now that ILMC's grown organically into this sort of size, then it's all good. The point is, Dan, what I'm trying to make is it was never intended to be some sort of conference in the conventional sense. It was a business meeting, right? That was the thing, The registration fees were decided by how much is it going to cost to put this thing on, how many people can come in, divide one by the other, and if we all chip in the same amount, then we can make it work,
So it was a necessity to have a meeting, and then the success of the meeting rolled on.
Yeah, what you didn't want was to be turning up at something like one of these things, I'm sure, that are great, that you can go to and there's 10,000 people there, and it's full of people trying to shove CDs into you, or whatever they use now instead of CDs. What do you shove into people's hands nowadays?
MP3s.
What? How do you put an MP3 in?
They put them on little drives, the flash drives, and they hand you the flash drives. Have you not seen that?
No, I have. It'd be too easy to make a joke out of being of the paper generation, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
But that's how they do that now.
But you know what I mean? People were like shoving things at you, and, that would have been really, really boring,
We talked about the necessity of the conference, and we haven't talked about this at all yet, but it came from you being an agent.
Oh, yes. Yes, I did that.
Which is the day job.
Yes. I should be very careful about going on record with that. It's just that we started out talking about the conference, and we're at the conference, and I'm in ILMC mode. And so it occupies my world at the moment. And I have to say that over the last 30 years, ILMC has been a huge part of my life, and I'm really, really proud of what it's done. And it merges with the agent thing. Being an agent and running an agency has been what I've done since 1972. that's been my life, my day-to-day life. It's how I've raised my kids and paid for some groceries and put a roof over the house and kept myself busy during the day,
It's a very successful agent for a very long time.
I don't know about very successful. I'm not being, you're going to think I'm being false modest here. I mean, there's plenty of really successful agents out there. I don't think I'm very successful. I survived it. I'm happy about that. That wasn't down to me. That could have ended at any time. It's the problem with being an agent. You're balanced on a knife edge all the time. And at any moment, somebody could just tip you off, Then you're out. You're gone. People forget you 6 months later,
Very cutthroat business.
Yeah, I don't know. Cutthroat. I don't know if it is. Again, that sounds negative. I just think you're throwing the dice all the time, Every year you roll the dice to see if you're going to be in business. To say it's cutthroat sounds like it's people who are agents going around stabbing each other in the back or doing the throat cutting. And I don't know whether that's true. I just think it's the circle. It is true. That's part of it. But it's part of a wider circumstance as to the dangers of being an agent and why I feel so really genuinely lucky to have got away with it for that long. I mean, how I got away with it without somebody revealing what an idiot you really are. And I'm talking to other people. I was amazed at how many other people feel the same way. You're just waiting for someone to unmask you and go, look, it's a dwarfish thief in giant's robes. I'm getting Shakespearean here.
Well, you've built something that's a social mecca for the community, though, through the conference. The idea of these big promoters didn't know each other back then. And I grew up in a time where you could go to Polestar and meet the biggest promoters and the biggest agents of my business. If I couldn't get them on the phone, I could walk up next to them.
It's funny because I remember Gary Smith coming up to me one year about 5 or 6 years in and said, look, we've been coming to the ILMC for a few years. We're thinking about starting the same thing in the States. I mean, would you mind if we took some of your ideas? And I thought, that's so polite. And it was. And there's no bad punchline here. It was actually a really nice thing from doing. And after asked me to start doing a conference. But he did.
The concept of the CIC came directly from Gary, saw it from here.
That was my perception of it. I'm certainly not going to sit here and try and take credit for it. I'm just telling you what happened. But Gary, I think I'm a mystery to Gary because he... I remember one year, Gary and I always used to finish off the ILMC, and it became a tradition that the two of us had to be the last people in the bar on the last night, which was the Sunday night, Monday morning. And we couldn't go to bed until everybody else had gone. And it got later and later and later. And then one year, I spent half the night playing table football with Ian Copeland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Copeland. What a fantastic guy he was, And I wouldn't let him go to bed until I'd drawn level on the table football table, and finally he gave in and let me. But what I'm trying to say is it became a thing where we couldn't go to bed until the lady had come round with a vacuum cleaner to sweep up the bar, right? And then we could go to bed. And then it became... we couldn't go to bed until the hotel manager checked in for work the following morning and he'd bring us bacon sandwiches. Then we could go to bed. So Gary and I have had many, many years of examining why am I doing this ILMC thing? He's been my kind of confidant. But I remember one year him perhaps having had a little bit too much to drink, collapsed on his bed in his room going, Martin, I just don't understand how you do this thing. It's not like you're smart or anything. I thought, classic line. It's like, thanks a lot, man.
Clearly you're close enough that he felt comfortable saying that to you.
Or drunk enough. Or far enough away from my boot.
It's funny. Well, I think it's one of the most entertaining, vast resources that our industry has. And I think it's wonderful, the thing you've created here, whether you meant to or not. It just seems amazing.
No, honestly, wouldn't it be great if I could sit here and say to you, yeah, because I saw all this happening. This is all part of my master plan. I knew exactly what was going to happen, and that's why I started it. No, that's not why it happened any more than half the groups I've worked with who've gone on to become well-known. I probably thought they were rubbish when I first saw them. And wouldn't it be nice if I'm not sure there are people who can do that. Just sit back and go, yeah, of course I saw it all along, But no, that's how it started. I'll take credit for having had the idea in the first place, and I will definitely take credit for having worked my fucking arse off over the years on this bloody thing and getting terrified every year before it came up and really nervous and everything else, Yeah, that took a chunk out of me. So I'll take credit for that. But for the results, that's down to the people who came to the thing. The reason the ILMC is a big success is because of the people who come. And even at the first one, when I started calling up people and saying, do you fancy coming to a meeting in London? Or who else is coming? And it was on the basis of a handful of names. Oh, if they're coming, then I'll come. And so it grew. And that's why people come to ILMC, because of the people who come to it, not because of all the stupid stuff that we do, all the funny stunts and the jokes and everything else. It's not the artwork or anything. It's the people who come to it.
If there's anything that you could put back into ILMC as far as programming or how it goes off that maybe it's lost over the years, is there something you put back in?
Well, yeah. I mean, I would, but this probably doesn't suit the state of the current industry, you see. I think anybody who was at number one and then at the first few years, but especially the first one, will always say that that was the very, very best one. It's hard to imagine now in a world where every weekend you're tripping over another bloody conference, but when there was nothing and all these great characters came together for the first time, Thomas Johansson, Leon Ramekers, Guy McCarter, Harvey Goldsmith, the Marcel Avrams, the Ozzy Hoppers, all these sort of characters had never met for the first time. And then Bill Graham turned up at one point, right? Famously. And everyone stood up and applauded because the famous Bill Graham had arrived in the room, That feeling in that room, and I had no idea this was going to happen. I just thought we'd have a business meeting and talk about horrible American agents and tour producers and stuff, But the warmth when you put those characters together was incredible. They all just found each other. It just took off.
I want to thank you so much for taking time and talking to me.
Actually, it's been a pleasure. I thought it was going to be like going to the dentist, but in fact, it's been fun, hasn't it?
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Martin is an outstanding and legendary agent. ILMC is just scratching the surface of his story. Hope to have him back to talk about his booking end of the business because he has just been in it doing it so long. But great to have him here to explain how that whole thing came to be. And it was really just supposed to be a one-year meeting that grew out of that. And clearly he had a passion for that project and it just built into something massive. If you haven't been to that conference, I highly suggest figuring out a way to expense a trip to London and check it out. It's worth doing. Wouldn't you say, Luke?
Absolutely. Great group of folks over there. Great vibe and culture that he's created. It'll be year 30 next March. Got to check it out.
Hi, I'm Sarah Pelch. I'm on Promoter 101.
Dan, we got some birthdays. Week of August 17th to 23rd, 2018.
Friday, the 17th, China Schwan Farrell from ICM Partners and the better half of the mustache, Rick Farrell. We love them both dearly. Alma Sheck, Neil Dixon.
On Saturday, wishing happy birthday to the Ryman Hospitality Group, Sally Williams, Jen Wincoop, Dave Fortune, and Rachel Cohen.
Sunday. WME's CJ Stropp, Polestar's Brad Rogers, CAA's Kyle Walensky, Brad Henderson, Bo Basic, and Greg Green.
On Monday, wishing a happy birthday to Kira Finkenberg.
Tuesday, 8/21, Donnie Frizzell, Stephen Gudis, and Gus Brandt.
On 8/22, that's Wednesday, wishing a happy birthday to Adam Cook.
And on Thursday, the 23rd, Hawaii's Rick Bartolini and Minneapolis's Randy Levy from Rose Presents.
Wishing y'all a happy birthday from the gang of Promoter 101.
Hey, this is Rob Zaffarelli.
Addie Ann Tarleton.
Paul Lohr. Phil Rodriguez.
Rick Greenstein.
Donatas Nachayos.
Drew Pellet. Rich Mills. Sasha Bombaji.
Seth Hurwitz. Steve Martin.
Whitney Bond.
This is Trip Brown.
Wayne Forte. Steve Zapp.
Trevor Solomon.
You live on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
That does it. Episode 96 of Promoter 101. It's in the books. We appreciate everyone tuning in today. If you're not already, please take a second, subscribe to this podcast, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. Shoot us a note, steiny@promoter101.net. That hits Dan and I. We want to hear from you. What'd you like? What didn't you like? What should we say? Tell us. We're desperate for feedback.
If you've got ideas for interviews of who you think we should have on, even if it's yourself, just, hey, shout at us. Say, hey, you guys have missed this person or me, and I'd be a great interview. And then we'll kindly say nobody wants to hear from you. The quote of the week comes to us from Cher. Until you are ready to look foolish, you'll never have the possibility of being great. I truly take to this one, Luke.
We'll be back next week, episode 97 of Promoter 101. We've got the legendary Mother Hubbard, a.k.a. Barbara Hubbard, and Kill the 8 merchandise company's Aaron Rosen joining us for some great interviews. Plus, of course, we'll be breaking down the news of the week.
Barbara Hubbard was just announced to be getting the Lifetime Achievement Award at Polestar Live this year. That just came out just this morning. So what amazing timing to have her here and talk about her history and story. What a great person. I can't wait for that one. But until then, we're wishing you sold out shows for the weeks to come.
Cheers.
Motherfucker.
Hey, this is Rick Canny from Favor the Artist Management, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba.